You may have seen this headline that we didn't need to close schools during COVID-19. But the story goes deeper than the headlines. Let's talk about it. The 2-year review in the report shows that schools were not a significant source of transmission of the virus. This was especially true when infection prevention and control measures were used. That does not mean that schools should have never been closed in the first place. In the initial days of the virus, we didn't know how it was being transmitted. We didn't know where the transmission was occurring, so closing schools was the right call. The problem was that schools in Ontario were closed for well over 100 days, which was significantly longer than anywhere else in North America or Europe. And when schools were reopened under the quadmester style, especially for high schools, it was an absolute disaster and had a lot of learning impacts on children that we're still seeing to this day. Students that I am teaching in grade 12 who were impacted by those quadmester styles have obvious gaps in their learning, not by any fault of their own, but simply because schools were closed longer than they needed to be. I want to reinforce, though, that Doug Ford was making the right decision initially by closing schools and keeping them closed for that first year. When schools reopened in September, we could have kept them open, but Doug Ford refused to make class sizes smaller, he refused to pay for proper ventilation, and he refused to do the things that needed to be done to keep schools safe. And because COVID kept exploding in Ontario, Doug found it easy to appease the population by closing schools, even if by that point in time the data was showing that that wasn't the right move. So while yes, schools should have initially been closed, they should not have been closed for the amount of time that they were. And this is just another example of why Doug Ford can't govern. Whether it's out of incompetence or in self-preservation to stay elected, Doug Ford does not do what's in the best interest of his people. He does what's in the best interest of himself.